So settle back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. In 2019, palliative care nurse Bronwyn Ware wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was based on her years and years having conversations with people in their final days of living. The number one regret of the dying, not, I wish that I'd worked less. The number one regret was, I wish I'd lived a life true to myself and not a life that others expected. That phrase has always struck me. I think for 2 reasons. The first reason is it's something I've always battled with. But the second reason is I get so much satisfaction watching people overcome their self-doubt and their fear and watch their true talents and passions shine. When I was writing this speech, I was reminded of the movie Sing. Some of you will know that it's an animated kids movie. There's a gorgeous shy elephant, Mina, and she couldn't overcome her self-doubt. And she finally did. She got up on stage and she belted out this most banging tune. You were just crying too, Jake. Yeah, it's one of those. So I'm so lucky that after I finished my OE and came back to New Zealand, and after a stint in corporate banking, I joined an organisation, an HR organisation, where I got to go into organisations like Westpac, IAG and Fonterra and teach groups of graduates and talent and leaders to bring more of their passion and their talents to work. It was incredibly rewarding. But at the same time, I wasn't being true to myself. My life started to take on 2 really distinct faces. The outside, I was suited and booted in the front of the room, running workshops all over New Zealand and all over Australia, looking like I had it together. My husband and I had a 1 and a 3-year-old at home that we were doing our best to raise. So that was the outside world. But on the inside, I was falling apart. I would have bouts of sadness for no reason and then feel guilty because I had nothing to be sad about. I had a really strong inner critic that was constantly undermining my confidence. And I just felt really stuck. But I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my boss. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't tell my friends. What did I have to complain about? But eventually, the cracks started to show. I became really highly strung. I became really defensive to feedback. It was really hard to talk to me. My husband described it as tiptoeing on eggshells around me. It took a loving but firm intervention from my husband to realise actually that I needed help. And I went and saw a mental health professional, and as it turns out, I had undiagnosed postnatal depression. Now that was a real eye-opener for me. So that was a year after the birth of my daughter. It was a massive eye-opener for me. And I was really determined to support myself and my well-being in the best way that I could. But you see, I had extra motivation. My dad suffered from significant mental illness. And many of you know that depression is hereditary. And he suffered from significant mental illness in his early 40s. And really sadly and tragically, I lost my dad to depression when I was only 18. So I had extra motivation to want to get well. I was nowhere near as severe as that, but I wanted to get well and stay well. And so I guess that's how I started on this journey. I became really interested in our minds and how they work and mental well-being. And because I came from an organisational background, I wanted to know how that could play out at work and how we could support people's performance by helping them to look after their minds. And I started to look around at the organisations that I was working with, and I couldn't see many that were doing a lot in this space 7 years ago. Organisations were really good at things like free counselling, EAP. There wasn't much else around, nothing really proactive and empowering that directly spoke to healthy minds in the workplace. So with a lot of mentoring and encouragement and guidance, I formed Blue Sky Minds 7 years ago, as you heard Tracy say. And ever since then, I've been really lucky to run hundreds of workshops with amazing groups of people, and I just feel so grateful for the work I've been able to do. Just about my entire career, I've been in the middle of at least one 8-week program that I deliver, and lots of other little programs. And many of you in the room, have been part of the work that we've done. And I've now got a small team, and we are so passionate, healthy minds and high performance in the workplace. So that brings me to tonight's talk. I thought to myself, how amazing would it be if I could distill down some of those key lessons that we teach in the workshops that we run, the things that people really connect with, the things that people will come and bump into me in the street later and they'll tell me about this one thing that they really, really helped them. It was practical and useful. And I thought, how cool would it be to kind of distill that down and to deliver it as a keynote? So that's kind of where this all started. So tonight, what I'm planning to do is share with you 6 key lessons that I think have been the most powerful with the groups that I've worked with. And my hope is that you can take these and apply them to your own life, but also that they're useful and practical enough that you can share them with your team. So, does that sound like a plan? Okay, all right, let's do it. Okay, cool. So, lesson 1, I'm calling Stand Behind the Waterfall. Now, the world is only getting faster, more complex, and changing more rapidly. I don't need to tell you this. It's becoming much more uncertain by the day. The ability to manage our minds in the midst of this is absolutely fundamental, and it's going to get more and more important. We need to be able to understand our minds, to know our minds. And the best way that I've found to do that is science-based mindfulness training. Now, I did an 8-week program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction back when I was unwell, and it was life-changing for me, both personally and professionally. And I know many of you in this room have done a similar program. Well, I loved it so much that I took myself over to Australia and trained to teach it. And it's an incredibly evidence-based, rigorous program, and it now forms the foundation of our offerings here at Blue Sky Minds. And I still believe that those tools that we teach are absolutely fundamental. But one of the best parts of my job is I get to go into corporates and say, oh, I'm going to talk about mindfulness. And you think, oh no. Wear the crystals, you're going to have a caftan on, we're going to have to group hug. I love dispelling myths about mindfulness. And there's a few out there. And, a few of you, if you were to ever Google words like mindfulness, meditation, and well-being and click on images, I guarantee you'll get at least one image of a gorgeous young woman sitting on a hilltop, lotus position, staring wistfully off into the distance, looking totally blissed out in her gorgeous Lululemon gear. Like, seriously, it's just not relatable. It's just not real, is it? I mean, I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to meditate, not on a course, but just on their own. As soon as you close your eyes, it's not bliss. You're just flooded with thoughts. It's like, I don't even know if I'm doing this right. And so I think it's really important to understand that there's an evidence base behind a certain type of mindfulness training, and you do not have to sit on a hilltop in lotus position. We teach mindfulness on the go that you can integrate into your busy lives. And thoughts are not the enemy. Thoughts are part of the package. So we just have to work with thoughts. It's not about a blank mind. And I think the other thing, which is an interesting misconception, is that mindfulness is a little indulgent. Mindfulness training is if you've got some spare time, it's a nice thing to have. You'll be more present. You'll smell the roses. And I think that's missing a whole lot. There's so much more to it than just that. And that's where I come to that saying, standing behind the waterfall. Because think about it like this. Most of us are mindlessly running through our day, aren't we? Meeting to meeting, thing to thing. It's like we're standing under the waterfall and all of our thoughts and feelings are just washing over us and we're just acting. It's kind of like this reactive. We might do or say something we later regret. We've all had those moments at work, haven't we? We say something like, oh, wish I hadn't said that. We're just kind of reactive. We're not really sure, the patterns that have led up to that moment. And I think once we have a good mindfulness practice under our belt, we can start to see a lot more clearly where we're getting stuck, the habits and patterns of our mind, our thoughts and feelings. It's the oscillations of our mind, we can see them clearly. There's a term called metacognition. So we're aware that we're aware and we can notice what's going on from moment to moment. And that can help us when we get stuck, because we'll get some early warning signs that we're getting reactive. So let me